Hello, my name is David Caldecott. I have written a novel called Time Not Here, and this is chapter 14. It is something that I've really enjoyed doing, reading out the novel. Hopefully it's bringing some more attention to the content of the story and some of the themes that I'm dealing with here that are pretty sensitive and pretty scary. Hopefully it's connecting with some of you. And if this is your first time here, I've recorded from chapter 1 up to now chapter 14. The last maybe 4 or 5 chapters, all the ones that I've been in this room I've done the recording on the same day. So it's been quite a long day and I've had to take a lot of breaks and it's quite cold in here, and so gradually putting more and more warm clothing on. But okay, let's get right to it. Chapter 14. Daniel met with Sam the day before his journey to the Netherlands. He had asked Sam to spare a few hours to talk. The truth was, he needed help to make sure he was mentally and emotionally prepared for the ordeal he was about to endure. "Do you feel like you're a real man?" he asked Sam. "Well, not really. Not by traditional standards." Sam shifted in his chair. "And what are those standards?" Daniel asked, more for his own understanding than anything else. "You know, the stereotypical masculine male that goes hunting and takes what he wants." "Do you think that your doctorate is a form of going hunting?" "Yeah, I suppose. I'm working hard to build a life for myself and eventually a family, yeah." "So what part of the traditional male stereotype do you not feel applies to you?" I guess I don't like the idea of being overly aggressive. Dominant men that screw people over. Men like Lathe. Yeah, exactly." Daniel looked towards the open door of the cafe as a cool breeze ran past his neck and sent a shiver down his spine. Looking back at Sam, he reflected on how Sam lived his life. Usually worried about the outcome of his regular exams, anxious about what to do after his PhD, sharing stories of other physicists overruling him on matters of importance. Is there any value in aggression and dominance if it's not taken to an extreme? Like, do you ever wish that you were more dominant at uni? Yeah, of course I do. We all do, but we have to be careful to keep it in check, right? How do we keep something in check that we don't use often enough to ever cross a line with? Daniel asked rhetorically. What are you getting at here, buddy? Well, I'm the same, right? I wish I was more dominant, more assertive, more manly in my own life. In my daydreams, I imagine reliving the scenes from my life over and over, but instead of cowering in fear, I imagine myself standing up tall and confronting the situation with courage, telling my clients what I really thought about them, going over and talking to the beautiful girl at the bar, punching Lathe in his stupid face. When I do that, I feel better about myself. Like that's what I should have done. Going over things we've done and telling ourselves how we'll do better is how we learn. It makes sense that you'd be doing that, Dan. Sam started before Daniel interrupted. But I never actually behave like that. Like ever. Every time I'm faced with a new situation, I run the same fearful program. Even if I've mentally rehearsed and told myself I'll be braver next time, I still... That program from Ethan and the Mouse, do you mean? Right. Daniel looked over at a middle-aged man sat on another table. His shoes were immaculately shiny. His suit tasteful and well-fitted. He sat with a strong posture and was speaking into his phone. "Listen, Danny, we have a long way to go before we close this deal. I need to trust that you can do what you say you will, or I'll lose confidence in your ability to follow through. Do what you gotta do. But get it done. I'm here if you need me, but get it done." Daniel had never spoken with such confidence. He wondered if Danny, on the other side of the phone, shared more in common with him than just the name. "Do you think that men should strive to be more traditionally manly?" he asked when he turned back to Sam. "Sometimes, yes, but as I said before, we need to find a balance and not let the masculinity get out of control." Isn't that the problem, though? Our fear of losing control. Young men in this culture are so afraid of being labeled a misogynist, a sexist, or a chauvinist that they're afraid of their own masculinity. Afraid of what it represents in the modern world. The narrative. What narrative? You know, men are bad, women are oppressed, men are dumb and baboonish. Homer Simpson, Raymond from Everybody Loves Raymond. Our screens are filled with men that are foolish, weak, and without much control over their lives. But there's hero figures too, like Luke Skywalker or John McClane. not John McCain. Although he was a hero too, right? Helicopter pilot during a war, but John McClane, we're talking about Die Hard. But there's hero figures too, like Luke Skywalker or John McClane, both of which were decades ago. Have you seen modern diehards? Sure, he's still blowing shit up, but his marriage has failed, he's a shit father, and he doesn't seem to be doing anything more than being a meathead who lets his gawky sidekick do all the thinking and problem solving. Sam laughed at the realization of how the character had changed over the years. So you're saying that modern TV and film doesn't portray men like they used to? Yeah. Now they're either overly masculine meatheads or they're weak and bumbling idiots. There's not much middle ground. Okay, so where are we going with this? Sam asked, checking his watch. Well, I've been thinking. Nowadays, most men learn about the world from TV and films. Parents play a much smaller role, and the community, the neighbors, the extended family are virtually non-existent in a young man's early life, at least in this society. But it wasn't always like that, right? Through most of the hundreds of thousands of years that humans have been around, kids were supported by people they knew and who cared about their well-being. If the parent was having a bad day, the uncle would step in and make sure that the child didn't internalize any negative emotions or feeling neglected or ignored. I agree with you there, Sam chimed in. Lack of community is tough for everyone. Not just men, though. I guess that's the cost of the modern society. But rite of passage is the key here, I think, Daniel continued. Aboriginal Australians went on walkabout. British aristocrats joined the Navy. Papua New Guinean teens were kidnapped by mask-wearing relatives to make them think they'd been abducted by the gods, fighting for their lives against the supremely powerful aggressors, confronting their greatest fears before the men would let them win, remove their masks and place one on the young man, symbolizing their graduation into the world of men, and that now they were a god too. I guess we don't really have that kind of thing anymore. Sam started to see where this was going. Exactly. A young man sees contradictory images of what it means to be a male human, has virtually no guidance or support from society on how to conquer his childish fears, and is even made to feel guilty for being a male. He has no context for his own existence, so resorts to filling his brain with social media, dramas at the office, or whatever other minutiae of life his attention is going to, rather than inventing some new technology, or starting a business, or changing the world through his politics. Maybe the crisis of our culture is a crisis of manhood. By this point, Daniel was talking with uncharacteristic enthusiasm and excitement. Our lives have gotten easier. Fewer of us ever go to war or face real life-threatening challenges, so we imagine reasons to get anxious about things that don't really matter. Then, when we do cross paths with actual dangerous people, like Lathe, we don't know how to cope. All our defense mechanisms have been drained on things that aren't life-threatening, so when our lives are actually threatened, we have no clue what to do. Sam took a final glug of his coffee and stood up. Daniel, I've known you for a while now. All I can say is this. You'll find the answers you're looking for. There was no doubt that this was going to be the most intense thing he was ever going to do. Waiting in the airport lounge, he made a point of not loading up YouTube on his phone. This was not the time to fill his head with something new. This was the time for reflection. A few years ago, he'd read a book, or half of it, about how the subconscious is often the part of the mind that actually solves problems. That the conscious mind jumps in at the last minute after the fact and takes credit for solving a problem that was already solved by the subconscious. Indeed, the conscious mind often gets in the way. In other words, the more the conscious mind focuses on trying to solve a problem, the harder it is for the subconscious to actually solve it. Daniel decided to stop trying to figure out all the answers. Why was Lathe able to control him? How had he been fooled? What did all of this have to do with Ethan, the mouse, and masculinity? For now, he had let his subconscious do all the work. He just focused his conscious mind on the view outside the terminal window, then the view from the plane, then the view from the train. The Netherlands drifted past until he arrived at the village where he'd spend the night. His ceremony started the next morning in a neighboring town. When he arrived at the hotel, he didn't want to talk to anyone, so kept his interaction with the receptionist as simple as possible. Thankfully, she didn't ask too many questions or try to make small talk. There was a restaurant next to the hotel with an outdoor seating area, where Daniel decided to have dinner. He had been told in his confirmation email, when he booked the Kimber ceremony, that he should not eat on the day that it started, which was tomorrow. So this was his last supper. Pizza would be a good choice, he thought. As he waited for his food, the bright midsummer sky slowly turned a sinister grey. A loud clap of thunder scared the other diners and left everyone doubting their decision to sit outside. Sure enough, less than a minute later, large and heavy drops of rain started to plop onto the tables and chairs, quickly growing into a crescendo as the heavens opened. A furore erupted, hurried bag grabbing and food protection as the diners relocated inside. Daniel sat squarely where he was. This storm was for him. In the morning, he took another train and made his way to the small town of Emmen in the eastern side of the country. It was a very green and tidy town with residents who smiled at him as he walked by. He'd been told by the ceremony host that there was a leisure centre nearby, and so had packed some swimming shorts to spend a few hours relaxing by the pool. Before the ceremony started, he found the place, paid his entry fee, and swam a few laps before laying his towel on the grass and in the outdoor pool area and staring into the sky. He wondered if any other people at the pool were also killing time before their ceremony, as there were probably about 10 other initiates that would be making their way to Emmen today, and this was the most sensible place to unwind before it all got started. It felt like a dream, like he wasn't really here, about to take Kimber and journey to the depths of his mind. It felt like any other day, just in Emmen instead of York. A few hours passed and time drew closer to when he was to meet Joseph. He got changed and went outside to have a smoke while he waited. The email said that Joseph would be waiting outside the leisure centre at 4 p.m. It was 4 p.m. now. 10 minutes passed, then another 10. Taking out his phone, he dialed Celeste's number and got a busy tone. He waited a few more minutes, and then tried again. Busy again. He lit another cigarette and started to worry. Are these people even serious? Is this just a prank, a way to mess with people and make them fly to another country expecting a savior from their troubles, only to be left abandoned and alone in a foreign land? His phone rang, and a heavily Dutch-accented woman said, "Hello." "Is this Magda?" "Yes, who is this?" the woman replied. Confused that she called without knowing who she was dialing, "This is Daniel. I'm supposed to be meeting Joseph at the leisure centre for the ceremony." "Ah, yes, of course. Hello, Daniel. I'm sorry, Joseph is a little bit late, but I'll call him now and tell him you are waiting." "Thank you, Magda. See you soon." Daniel lit yet another cigarette and watched the cars entering the car park, trying to see if he could guess which one was Joseph's. 5 cars came and went, then another 10. Some looked like wealthy professionals, others like hairy hippies. Then, eventually, an average-looking station wagon pulled up and a tall, bald man wearing a black vest climbed out. He had silver necklaces around his neck and earrings in both earlobes. He looked at Daniel and smiled. The smile almost knocked Daniel back a step. He'd never seen anything like it. Like it was the first time someone had given him a real smile. He waved and said, "Joseph?" "Yes," the man replied with his Dutch accent, before signaling Daniel to climb into the car. As he put his bag in the trunk, he spotted 2 other men, one in the passenger seat and one in the back. Other initiates? Joseph held the door open for him, and they made eye contact. He had those same eyes, those deep and peaceful eyes that had felt so inexplicable when he'd seen them on Celeste. He climbed in the car and said a nervous hello to the other 2 men, before pulling out his notebook and writing down a few words he didn't quite understand, but from a song that he had heard once, they were words that felt like they needed to be written down right now. "Today is a good day for my ego to die. And that concludes part 2 of Time Not Here. We are now halfway through the book, and we have remaining part 3, which is called Hokahe, and part 4, which is called Serenity. We're not far off, so let's keep going. Peace and love, everybody. The next few chapters are gonna get a little bit wild.